Hi, I'm Chris Morrison here with Glen Giovannetti at the Bio Buzz Center. Glen's from Ernst & Young, and Ernst & Young has just today released its most recent Beyond Borders report. Glen, give us the top line takeaway from this report, specifically how it relates to last year's HoldNets idea in the report.
Well, yeah, it's a couple ways we could really tie those two things together. One is for the last several years, really since the financial crisis, we've been talking about the adaptations that biotech companies have made to be more capital efficient, to use their available funding in the most efficient way possible through new paradigms for R&D, including what we described last year was HoldNets, which, to remind everyone, was a concept around holistic open learning networks. The idea of doing more in a pre-competitive space, more collaboration, gain more insights and more learning as a way to perhaps reduce some of the inefficiencies inherent in drug R&D. In some sense, we pivoted this year to think about the other big challenge, and we're calling the challenges we've been addressing matters of efficiency, and this year we're pivoting a bit to talk about the other challenge, which is matters of evidence. And
so last year, if I remember correctly, companies largely agreed that there was a problem and were coming together around ideas that resemble HoldNets to solve them. Do they also agree that there's an evidence problem?
Everyone agrees that having evidence around the differential value a particular product in development is expected to bring to the market will be critical. There's no disagreement. In fact, this is based on a survey we did of about 60 companies across Europe and the US. Nobody disagrees that that's very important. We did find a gap in, unlike in the areas of efficiency where people had actually undertaken initiatives against that strategic imperative, we did find a gap where fewer companies had actually taken action around gathering evidence or anticipated.
So we see there's a problem, but we're not doing anything about it.
Yeah, it's probably not that simplistic in the sense that some of the questions we asked was about adding the capabilities to your team, and clearly people are thinking more strategically about how they design clinical trials to get after the true value points. But nevertheless, there was a gap. But the other way the gap was illustrated actually beyond the survey was the fact that we talked to several VCs backing early stage companies who clearly said this was important to them. The value proposition of even of an early stage technology was critical to their thinking when they did their due diligence. Once they were invested, they wanted their companies to really be thinking that way and to be doing the right kinds of trials to get at that evidence. And yet we also talked to a number of big pharma BD professionals who said quite often when they start to look at a potential product for either in-license or acquisition, the value proposition is not well articulated.
So was this a surprise to the venture capitalists?
I think the conclusion, a little bit, but I think the conclusion was we may have a little bit of a time phasing going on here where VCs now are very aware of this. They're definitely investing differently than they did 5 years ago. The message may be rolling into companies, but when a pharma company is looking at a later stage technology, they would clearly like to see more in terms of the clinical trial endpoints having got after the critical measures of value.
Right. And how are pharma companies defining those critical measures of value? Are they taking into consideration direct input from payers?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, first of all, they're trying to hold to the same standard on external licensing and acquisition conversations as they're putting their own portfolio through. One made the comment that maybe they're harder on the outside because they favor their internal programs a little better, but the fact is, yes, they're very engaged in the same way they are with their own portfolios around soliciting advice from key opinion leaders, understanding payer attitudes about a product and what is likely to be reimbursed. And what's really important is you can know about the standard of care today and the competitive pressures today, but you also have to take into account the fact that there's going to be several years before you come to market. And so understanding the entire environment around what will go generic, for example, in between, what are other competitors looking at in terms of potential solutions. There's really a holistic view that needs to be taken, and increasingly the pharma companies are taking that view, and they're saying it impacts the value they will accord to a biotech product.
Well, we look forward to it trickling down through the pipeline. Thanks, Glen.
Thank you, Chris.
From the Bio Buzz Center, this is Chris Morrison with Glen Giovannetti. Thank you for joining us.